Good evening. Tonight is Tuesday, October 28th, 2014. Welcome to the Southbridge School Committee meeting. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask that you join the school committee in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2 is public input. Is there anybody from the public who would like to address the school committee this evening? Seeing none, we'll call the meeting to order. It is 7:00 p.m. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Congdon?
Present.
Mr. Olivo?
Present.
Dr. Page?
Present.
Mrs. Donovan?
Present.
Mrs. Quinney?
Present.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Present.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Present.
All present.
Thank you. Agenda item number 5 is the approval of minutes. Minutes of the October 14th regular school committee meeting were previously disseminated for review. Dr. Page had some additions that he submitted earlier. Are there any other corrections to the minutes? Be noted. If there are none, can I have a motion to accept the minutes with Dr. Page's corrections? Thank you. Mr. Abrahamson makes the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Page. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes.
Thank you. The next approval of minutes, the minutes of the October 15th School Committee Student Advisory Committee meeting were disseminated for review. Are there any corrections to these minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Mr. Abrahamson makes the motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Page. Any other discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Abstained.
Mrs. Quinney?
Abstained.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Abstain.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
We have 4 yes and 3 abstentions.
Motion carries. Thank you. Minutes are approved. Agenda item number 6 is chair announcements. I have a couple of brief ones. We do have a busy meeting tonight. First, I would just like to remind the public of some important upcoming dates. Please note that November 7th, which is a Friday, is an early release day. November 10th, our parent-teacher conferences for Eastford Road School from 4 to 7 p.m. November 11th is Veterans Day. There will be no school. However, we ask that you consider supporting our veterans at the parade on Main Street. November 12th, Tuesday, parent-teacher conferences for, Wednesday, I'm sorry, parent-teacher conferences for West Street and Charlton Street schools will be held from 4 to 7 p.m. You might recall we arranged our school committee meeting that night to follow at 7:30. On November 13th, parent-teacher conferences will be held for Southbridge Middle High School from 4 to 7 p.m. I'd also like to let parents know that there are upcoming flu clinics at our schools. Thursday, October 30th, Southbridge Middle High School will be holding a school flu clinic. On November 10th, Eastford Road School will hold a flu clinic. West Street School recently held theirs on, I believe it was October 2nd, and that might be true of Charlton Street as well. Did Charlton Street hold their clinic? I was unable to find that out, but did they? Yes. Okay. So the upcoming ones will be held at Eastford Road School and Southbridge Middle High School. And finally, I just wanted to say that at the last meeting we spoke about an upcoming visit by Associate Commissioner Russell Johnston, Senator Moore, and Board of Education member David Roach, who they visited the district on Wednesday, October 15th, and the school committee was invited to meet with them. Just very briefly, Mr. Johnson began his remarks by citing his reasons for the visit. Specifically, he was interested in our AIP. He remarked that it was a good AIP and that he wanted to see it in action. So he received a tour of Southbridge Middle High School, and he was pleased with the tour and impressed with what he saw taking place. That's what he said. He was very pleased that students were taking PSAT exams the day that he was there. And he relayed a story about a student who had transferred to Southbridge Middle High School from another state, who had taken, I think it was an anatomy course in the other state, and was taking an anatomy course here, and asked how the two compared. And he was pleased when the student told him that she thought the work here was a little bit more challenging and rigorous. So she liked working independently, so that was nice to hear. The school committee inquired about the decade-long underperforming level 4 status that we are working desperately to shed. And Mr. Johnson was very frank with us. He said turnaround doesn't happen overnight, that results must be sustained over time. And this is a quote, he said, "We had definite movement in the right direction with the last MCAS, but 1 year is not enough. And we need to show that if we are removed from the level 4 designation, the district can stand on its own." So we're looking forward to that. But he did express confidence in the work that's being done here, and recommended to us that we all stay focused on what really matters. And what did he say? He recommended that all of our action should be focused on instruction, and that we have continual updates on the AIP in order to make adjustments and corrections along the way if necessary. So later on today, tonight, we're going to be hearing from the Department of Ed regarding our AIP. We look forward to that. But it was what I would call a very good, positive meeting that we had with them, and perhaps the superintendent will fill in some of the blanks that maybe I didn't fill in. So thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is reports. So we have a report of the representative of the Student Advisory Committee, Mr. Boisvert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have some announcements for the Student Council. Thanksgiving festivities are well in the making. Skits are being created, the pep rally is being planned, and so is the bonfire. On November 14th, the High School Student Council is holding a dance for the middle schoolers. During December, the Student Council members will be ringing bells for the Salvation Army at Shaw's Supermarket. It'll add up to a total of 45 hours. During November, we are participating with Mr. Thomo and the Sheriff's Department for the Coats and Kids fundraiser, where we collect winter jackets to donate to kids who necessarily don't have enough money to get them. At the bonfire, there will be an alumni football game. The two teams have at least 20 players so far and are looking to get more. Announcements from the National Honor Society. National Honor Society's next event will be a karaoke trivia night at Uno's Restaurant in Southbridge on Wednesday, November 19th. There will be a dough raiser, which up to 20% of sales proceeds will be donated to the National Honor Society. There will also be a canned food drive as part of the event. As part of its various community service activities, the National Honor Society will be making and donating 3 Thanksgiving baskets to needy families within the district. The school social worker and guidance counselor will be consulting in advance in order to choose the families who will be receiving the donation of goods. Thanksgiving baskets will be presented to the families before the students leave for break during that week. On Sunday, November 16th, Mr. John Moderosian and Ms. Melissa Earls will be taking 6 Southbridge Middle High School students to WGBH Studios in Boston to participate in Super Sunday, a qualifying event for Season 6 of the WGBH High School Quiz Show. Over 120 high schools will be represented, and based on the results of the qualifying exam, 16 teams will participate in the televised event. Southbridge Middle High School is very proud to be able to participate in this event. Today, Ms. Faracco of Mass Edco took 70 juniors and seniors to a college fair at Regis College in Weston, Mass. Approximately 60 colleges were in attendance, and we were able to gather information in the college planning process. We provided lunch and were fortunate enough to eat outside at a state park on our way home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boisvert. Next, we have school committee reports. Mrs. Donovan, do you have a curriculum subcommittee report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The Curriculum Subcommittee met on October 15th at 6:30 in room N115. The meeting was called to order at 6:35. Present was myself, as well as subcommittee members Dr. Page and Mr. Abrahamson. Also in attendance was Ms. Cheryl Stanton, our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, as well as Mrs. Congdon, a community member. We approved our minutes from our prior meeting of September 24th. Then we moved on to the AIP. Ms. Stanton gave us another monthly update of the AIP on the progress of the action items that have been done through September and October. So we went through those. She provided a handout for those. Then we talked about our ELL position, our program. We know that we have a new ELL literacy instructional resource specialist with us on board. So we went through all the activities and actions that she has conducted so far since her time here. It's pretty substantial. She's doing some fantastic registering of students, documentation of students, creating master listings, testing students, figuring out who needs what and where, working with our IRS people, working with our principals. So we're very pleased and excited to hear that that ELL program is on track. So we appreciated that. We next talked about an article that was in the Southbridge Evening News relative to West Street School receiving or being nominated for a program called United Teach. And we subsequently found out that that was the wrong West Street School, that was in fact a West Street School in Canada. So although it was exciting, it really did not pertain to us. So, oh well, it sounded like a good program anyway. Oh, was it Singapore?
It was a Canadian school in Singapore.
Okay, a Canadian school in Singapore. My correction. Thank you, Mr. Abrahamson.
On West Street, though.
On West Street, yes. So then we talked about our reading program and targeted interventions for our new reading program for National Geographic. So we went into that, and we were assured that certain targets have been established within the program for both our ELL and our special ed subgroups. So that was great news. Then we talked about Edwin Teaching. That's an online resource that our district will participate in. They're actually going to get training on that on November 4th. Ms. Stanton was very familiar with that program and is in the process of actively taking part in that program. So that was all positive news moving forward. And then after that, our meeting adjourned at 7:50 p.m.
Thank you, Mrs.
Thank you.
Donovan. As chair of the ad hoc committee for the superintendent evaluation, do you have a report on that as well?
Yes, thank you. The Superintendent Ad Hoc Committee met on Wednesday, October 22nd at 10 a.m. Present were myself, subcommittee members Mrs. Congdon, Mrs. Abrahamson, Mr. Abrahamson, excuse me. Also present was Superintendent Gardner and Mr. Walter Solzak, our Director of Operations and Student Affairs. We approved our minutes from October 1st and then moved right into the superintendent evaluation tool. The second part of our tool, it's a two-part tool. First deals with goals. So we, at my last report, talked about some of the goals and action plans that have been determined for the superintendent. The last piece that we added to that were benchmarks, which are really just specific timelines and artifacts of evidence, if you will, of things that the superintendent will be doing throughout her course of the year that pertain to both those goals and her action plans. From there, we moved on to the rubric, and the rubric contains the indicators and elements upon which we will evaluate her. There's roughly 60 of them. We are advised to choose 8 to 10, so our committee did choose 8. We have 4 standards, and then within those standards, we chose 2 from each standard. There is a rubric that DESE recommends as the rubric. So we went through and we decided on the 8 that would most specifically apply to our district and to the work of Ms. Gardner as part of her new induction program with the superintendency. So all that got taken care of. I did submit a memo and a copy of all that information to my fellow school committee members. If there's anything that you want to discuss, please be sure to let me know. And then the last piece was to discuss artifacts of evidence, and again, that is just what Ms. Gardner will provide to the school committee members as evidence to show that she has fulfilled her goals as well as completed her action plans within the timely benchmarks. So all that being said, we concluded our meeting at 11:10 a.m. and we do not have a meeting set at this point in time. And if I could just step back real quickly, I forgot to mention for curriculum, our next meeting will be held on Wednesday, November 19th at 6:30 p.m. in room M115. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Donovan. Mrs. Quinney, do you have anything to report for negotiations?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The negotiation subcommittee will begin negotiations with SEI Union Local 888, also known as the Custodian and Maintenance Union, tomorrow at 6:30 in room M200. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything to report as a SPEDPAC liaison?
I do. The SPEDPAC over the weekend had a pumpkin painting fundraiser, which was a great success. Thank you to all who came and volunteered their time, and there were many donations made in order to make that event a positive one for the children who did attend. The next meeting of the SPEDPAC will be November 20th, and there'll be an informational workshop on in-home behavioral therapy and ABA services, and that again is free. If anyone is interested, please come to room M100 at 6 p.m. on the 20th of November. And that is all. Thank you.
Mrs. Congdon, Family and Community Engagement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a meeting posted and scheduled for Monday, November 3rd at 6:30 in room M100 on 25 Cole Ave. The agenda will include approval of the minutes, discussion regarding the month of November being Parent Volunteer and Family Literacy Month, discussion regarding the objectives of the FACE Subcommittee, and member open forum. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And do you have anything to report for the joint meeting that occurred between the school committee and the Student Advisory Committee?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the school committee, myself, Mr. Abrahamson, Dr. Page, and Mrs. McLaughlin attended the meeting on Wednesday, October 15th with the Student Advisory Council members, Ms. Matthew, Mr. Allard, Ms. Ramirez, and Mr. Boisvert, as well as Principal Earls and Director of Transportation, Operation and Student Affairs, Mr. Solzak. Items on the agenda included discussion of conferences for the Student Advisory Council to attend, and the students were going to be discussing that with Mr. Carrero. We discussed the month of November being Family Literacy and Parent Involvement Month. We talked about different ways to increase parent involvement at the school and what the students were doing in regards to those initiatives. We talked about possibly starting community-centered schools where we utilize our school districts, and especially the middle school, high school, as more of a community school, running night programs. We discussed new career personality testing and involving the parents in that process, and different packets that were sent home in the past to give the students and families different ideas of careers. We also discussed policy JICA, which is student dress code policy, and policy JICA, communication devices. The students discussed their views on the dress code. They thought that it was well enforced. They said that the low-riding pants were still distracting, and discussed different ways to help prevent that. They talked about possibly holding a fashion show to show appropriate clothing, and maybe holding that during parent-teacher conferences. And in regards to the cell phone policy, the students said it was beneficial for some students to be able to listen to music during class to help them concentrate, and they were going to try to poll other students to see what would be acceptable for them in regards to these policies to get their feedback. And then we held an open discussion, and we mentioned that Mr. Boisvert serves as the student representative to the school committee. He's a non-voting member, but he can comment on anything on the agenda. We talked about having him receive the school committee agenda on Fridays for the morning, so he can discuss the agenda with the members of the student council and bring back to the school committee different student concerns regarding items on the agenda. And then we ended the meeting at 7:35. Thank you, Madam Chair. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, November 19th at 7 a.m. with the Student Advisory Committee at the middle high school. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just give a report on the policy subcommittee. Actually, I don't really have a report other than to state that we'll be voting on one policy and have the second readings of 3 others a little bit on the agenda. Other than that, the next meeting will take place on Wednesday, November 5th at 7 p.m. in room M115, 25 Cole Avenue. On to agenda item number 9, presentations this evening. This evening, we're pleased to be joined by members of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Ms. Laura Rashane, District Planning Implementation and Monitoring Lead, Ms. Patricia Williams, our Plan Monitor, and Ms. Brooke Clenchy, the Senior Associate Commissioner. We'd like to welcome you this evening. Please. They are here to discuss the Accelerated Improvement Plan Quarterly Progress Report. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Rashane, and I'm here on behalf of the Center for District and School Accountability at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And with me also this evening is Senior Associate Commissioner Brooke Clenchy, as well as the Southbridge AIP Plan Monitor, Patricia Williams. So first of all, thank you very much for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here. The report that Ms. Williams will be presenting addresses the period of June through September. But I thought that I would just briefly take a step back for a moment just to place the report in context, both in terms of the chronology of events in Southbridge as well as sort of the big picture of the AIP process. First of all, just wanted to acknowledge that much has changed since the last time you heard an AIP monitoring report, which I believe was back in April. So since that time, obviously there's a new district leadership team in place. There's a new AIP monitor as of July. There's an updated accelerated improvement plan that was approved by the department over the summer. So it's looks a lot different than it did in April in many ways. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Also just wanted to take a step back and look at the AIP process itself for a moment, just the big picture. So as you know, I'm sure, the goal of the AIP process is to impact student learning by helping districts to engage in what we call a continuous cycle of improvement. In other words, what we're hoping that districts will develop the capacity to do is to self-assess, to set very clear, ambitious objectives for improvement, to develop a plan to meet those objectives, to implement the plan rigorously and with fidelity, to monitor the plan, in other words, to use data to reflect about what's working and what's not working, and to modify as needed to make sure the plan is as effective as possible. And the goal is for that cycle to continue, for the plan to continuously be getting more rigorous and more focused as time goes on, and for that work to become more and more embedded in the district so that eventually support isn't needed from the department, that that's something the district does on its own. So again, just in terms of context, I would really place this report, this reporting period, sort of at the beginning of that process. So district leaders during this period of June through September did a very honest self-assessment of where the district was, established very clear objectives, developed a good plan for meeting those, and began the process of implementation. So that's what you'll hear Ms. Williams talking about this evening. The next phase in that process is implementation, and that's crucial, as you know. That's when the urgent work really happens. That's when the rubber hits the road of improving teaching and learning throughout the district so that every student in Southbridge gets a quality education every day. And so the next AIP report, which will probably be in around January, will focus on the quality of implementation during the next period, as well as the ways that the district is using data to assess what's working and what's not working and making modifications. So anyway, I'm here if you have questions. Otherwise, I will turn it over to Pat to discuss this report focused on June through September.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here tonight and to meet all of you for the first time. I'm reporting, as Laura said, on June through September activity under Southbridge's 2014-2015 Accelerated Improvement Plan, known to all of us as the AIP. As Laura has pointed out, Southbridge got approval of its AIP soon after its submission and was able to devote considerable time during the summer to curriculum work, to revising the Southbridge standard, and to detailed planning for the year. The summer planning was important in a year when the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and all principals were either new to the district or new to their positions. Under Strategic Objective 1, which is develop, refine, and implement curricula for all K-12 core subjects and instructional practices aligned to the Common Core and WIDA standards, a great deal of work was done in this area. Teachers in the district blogged over 1,000 hours writing curriculum this summer. As a result, K-12 math curriculum maps are complete. K-5 English language arts curriculum maps for reading are complete, and curriculum guides 6 to 12 in ELA are also complete. Also, the district this fall is implementing a new and much-needed literacy program, National Geographic's Reach for Reading series, and training for the implementation is underway. Additional important work completed this summer includes the revision of the Southbridge Standard. The Southbridge Standard lists key instructional strategies that the district promotes and expects to have in place in classrooms. It guides what administrators look for when they observe in classrooms and when they conduct learning walks. A detailed district calendar lists monthly district learning walks, and individual schools are also doing their own learning walks. These learning walks involve administrators and teachers doing 20-minute observations in a series of classrooms to get snapshots of the teaching and learning taking place. The learning walks result in a chart that summarizes the day's observations, and they result in a report back to the classroom teachers on what was observed. Strategic Objective 2, expand and embed the use of data K-12 to foster a cycle of continuous improvement aimed at assessing and improving instructional practices throughout the district. Southbridge is collecting data in many areas, from monthly reports from principals concerning areas such as attendance, failure reports, and discipline, from quarterly content exams at the high school, and from learning walks. An area of critical concern is the MCAS results in Southbridge for English language learners and students with disabilities. The district has recently done an analysis of the reasons for these students' low achievement and is drafting plans for addressing their instructional needs. These plans, when complete, represent a key to improving student achievement in Southbridge. Strategic Objective 3, improve educator quality and ability to implement rigorous and ongoing instruction. Implementation of the educator evaluation system is central to the achievement of this objective. A record of the activity under this initiative is available to district administrators electronically on what is called TeachPoint. District administrators will be monitoring the quality of the feedback provided to teachers by principals following classroom observations. DLT meetings, district leadership team meetings with principals, are also intended to serve as professional development for their growth as instructional leaders. In a recent DLT meeting that I attended, principals reviewed the school's MCAS results with one another as a group. The monitor did not receive evidence regarding Strategic Objective 4, which is increased parent and community involvement to enhance student learning, so I'll be reporting on that at a later time. This is a report on early implementation of activities that support the Accelerated Improvement Plan. The district has planned well and will be collecting evidence concerning student achievement, as well as regarding the quality of classroom instruction and of principal leadership. Future quarterly progress reports will provide detailed information concerning progress made toward achieving each AIP objective. I'd like to read the next steps that I included at the very end of the report. Ensure teacher implementation of the curriculum maps that were developed over the summer, one of the district's achievements. Continue curriculum development in content areas not yet addressed. Train principals, instructional resource specialists, and teachers in the implementation of the new literacy program. Review, communicate, and implement the plans for improvement in the delivery of instruction to English language learners and students with disabilities. As I say, this is a key focus for Southbridge. Establish a system for collection, review, and response to data concerning principals' roles as instructional leaders. Continue to use DLT meetings as professional development opportunities for administrators. And finally, ensure meaningful implementation of the educator evaluation system at all levels. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, or to include my friends from the state if you have questions.
Anybody have any questions? Dr. Page?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a, thank you. I have a question. You mentioned something in the very beginning about conducting these 20-minute teaching and learning walks where you're going to be evaluating teaching and learning. Could you give me an example in the context of what kind of information will be collected during that period of time for both of those two attributes, and what kind of action plans?
I can give you a quick example, but I think the district people would do a better job. The Southbridge Standard lists 7 instructional strategies that the district hopes will be in use in classrooms. And I know that the district learning walks, when they occur and do this 20-minute observation, each classroom they go into, they're looking for 4 of the 7 instructional strategies. So they keep a record of what they observe in each of these successive classrooms as they go along. And I'd be happy to yield to anyone from the district who wants to add to that.
Yeah, so I guess if I may follow up now, I'm more interested in the learning part in terms of how the learning is going to be assessed, because if you're going in, I'm trying to sort of walk myself through what would occur, and you can walk in and say, okay, yeah, the teacher's doing everything, check, 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 but how is the learning part being assessed in the context of that kind of thing? I'm curious to hear how that assessment's going to be as to whether or not learning is being achieved.
Thanks. Thank you. So as the learning walks progress over the year, one of the things that will happen is teachers, administrators will work together, become more familiar with the tool, and they will start to include looking at student work, examining student work as it's occurring, and actually asking students, without disrupting the classroom, about what they're learning, and if they feel that reteaching is occurring, if they feel that the teacher is able to differentiate for them, given their level, if they're below grade level or above grade level. So those are things that we move toward as we become familiar with the process.
Okay. So it's almost like the people that are conducting these will be putting the students through many quizzes? Saying,
more like a conversation. I think when the associate commissioner came and was discussing, asking students questions about how they felt about school, it's more like that.
Okay.
So it's getting the student perspectives.
So asking a student how they feel about school is very different from whether or not it's ascertaining whether they're learning the concept that's being taught at that
So the next thing
time.
we do is we start to gather student work.
Yeah.
And that might not occur in a learning walk. That may occur at grade level meetings or at department meetings, where we start to compare student work samples, and we generate exemplars of student work so that we're raising the expectation for student outcome.
Okay. So that's something that really comes in the context of, sort of an after the fact analysis and not actually during that walk.
Correct.
Okay. So I just want to clarify in my mind that I understand, what all of this is. So really what you're doing, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just paraphrasing what I'm understanding, is that you're assessing the teacher's ability, or you're basically assessing what the teachers are doing, not necessarily whether or not the students are absorbing information at that particular time.
Well, if I might, I think part of what we're doing is, having been here last year, particularly the high school, middle school, quite frankly, when we did learning walks, we saw stage on the stage or chalk and talk. So we were at a point in where this district's progress was, that we needed to provide professional development to teachers to develop instruction and curriculum better so that it became more student-focused. So a lot of what we're doing with Focus on Results and much of what we're doing with our professional development and in our data meetings with teachers is to make students become involved and to make students become a part of their learning more than having a teacher standing up talking to them for 50 minutes, which was pretty prevalent. Elementary teachers have never really been able to get away with that, but you know, high school teachers can say turn to page 20 and do the 9 questions and have a much better chance of that. So it's a piece that works together. So yes, I mean, quite frankly, you can't go in and tell what a 13-year-old is thinking ever. If you can, I'd love to write that book, and I would probably be on a beach somewhere. But not knowing that, you can go in and look to see what students are producing, the conversations that they're having, and you can see if it's tied to their curriculum. And we are often offering professional developments to teachers that focus on best practices in the classroom, so that when we go in, we have something that we feel like students will feel better with. So many times teachers teach in a silo, especially in the high school, middle school. We want students to go into a classroom and feel some continuity with the classroom that they were just in manner of questioning, in manner of responses, and all of those things will come back to help us close our gaps on MCAS, ANET, and other testing. I mean, ultimately, in a state like Massachusetts and pretty much anyone else, we're a testing state. So, I mean, ultimately, our numbers come, you know, when we test them. We're devising some benchmark testing. Although it was said that there were curriculum maps made in the past few years, we found that they were not. So we've had to do those. So now teachers have something that they follow that's more uniform. So there's a lot more to it than just a really cut and dried answer of what we're looking at. It's about a million things.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. So another issue is there's a lot of focus, as I can imagine, as you know, we see on ELL and students with disabilities. Yes. However, when I look at the data, in a lot of the categories, it's very difficult to differentiate between the general population and specifically those populations in terms of the individual performance. It seems like we're performing very low all across the board. And so and maybe that's because we have such a high population of students in certain categories that it's difficult to, I mean, you can carve them out from the general population. But if you compare some of those numbers with the general population, they don't really look a lot different. And so is there a way to assess that data? I mean, is there a way of looking at, say, non-low income students without disabilities and saying, are they really achieving at this hugely higher level than these other populations? Because the way I look at the way the data is presented by the DESC, it's very difficult to determine that. And it almost looks like we have low or underperformance overall.
And that's accurate. You do have low student performance in Southbridge, but, and I don't have the data in front of me, but what we refer to is what's called a learning gap between that of the school population overall. Southbridge, all students, we put a capital A-L-L next to it, and that of ELL students and students with disabilities, and there is a gap. You are overall in the lower ranks, but there is a serious gap, and it's one that the district administration and teachers are, I got a copy in the mail this afternoon of the plan that's been developed to address that. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but it is a very serious responsibility of the district. The gap is important and needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else on this side with questions? Over here, questions? Mrs. Quinney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first question that I have is in regards to the accelerated improvements plan process in general. I said that at this stage we're at the, we did self-assessment and we're going to be implementing. We've had multiple plans, accelerated improvement plans. How long does a plan go for? This current plan has been approved. How long will we be working off and implementing this plan?
Yep, that's a great question. Thank you. So you're right. There have been multiple plans in Southbridge. First of all, just want to emphasize that this is the first time that a plan has been approved so early in the year and has been demonstrably implemented. So as you can see, our plan monitors in all districts, but Pat has a particular strength in this, being on the ground, and actually she has seen and collected a lot of evidence and data showing that there has been implementation and fidelity to the plan so far. We require, in terms of the AIP process, we require districts to submit an AIP annually. So this particular plan would need to be updated in the course of things by the end of the year or over the summer. And in terms of how long the process takes in different districts, it really varies. That cycle of improvement that I mentioned, what we're looking for is that each part of that is really embedded in the district. And there's sort of a phasing out process that we do in districts that are ready for that. Southbridge is not at that point yet, but we are optimistic that the district will get there. So.
I guess the observation is, we set a plan. Granted, I think it's phenomenal that our plan was approved prior to the start of school, which in no way, shape, or form is a small miracle due to very hard work from a significant amount of people. But with multiple plans, we've only gotten to we've set the plan, we're starting to implement. How is this, you talk about a cycle of improvement.
Right.
We seem to start, go back, and start and go back, and we haven't ever come through a full cycle.
Right.
So would the hope be that this year, having been approved early, we'll get through an entire cycle and then not necessarily recreate a new plan to implement, but change things at a higher level and more focused?
Exactly, and the way I explained it may have been a little too linear, so it's not, 2 months this, 3 months that, it's,
No.
But right, absolutely. So our hope would be, now that there's a viable plan in place, that the implementation of that plan would be high quality, rigorous, relentless, that there would be reflection on how it's working, changes would be made during the year, and then when that plan is updated, it really is an update because the district throughout the year has been looking at data, has been making tweaks, has been looking at student work, looking at the results of other benchmarks. So the next plan really should be a more rigorous, more focused version of the one that's there now.
A deepening and extending. So the success would be to have a good plan in place for a year and then move it to a higher level, not put in place a whole new plan at the end of the year.
That makes sense. And is there any evidence or reason that this particular plan was approved so quickly versus the ones in the past? Like, what changed? What's different?
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing right? That would be nice to share.
That's a great question. So, yeah, I think a few things happened. One was, so there was a plan that was submitted last spring, and so we were able to work with the district on sort of which parts of that to keep and which parts needed more, really we needed a lot more specificity. So this plan was a lot more specific than what we've received in the past from Southbridge, more clear, and the other piece of this is that, we're constantly evaluating ourselves as well. And one piece of feedback that we received from districts, loud and clear, was that when we were giving feedback on AIPs, it really wasn't as helpful as it could have been. And so there were probably times, quite honestly, where Southbridge heard from us and didn't quite, we probably weren't as clear as we could have been about what needed to improve, even though our intent was, of course, to be as clear as possible. And so what we did this year was we actually met with the district, with Superintendent Gardner and her team, before we officially reviewed the plan. So we looked at a draft. The accountability team at the department came up with a number of questions. We're able to learn more in person about the plan. We're able to give some feedback and have the district really engage with us, ask questions about what we meant, what we were looking for. And I think, and district leaders can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that process resulted also in a more effective plan. Yes.
Thank you. I have a lot of questions. Sorry. The monitoring report, so the next coming report will then describe those progress towards our benchmark. So we've kind of laid out the first steps. We have these things in place. This is how we're going to accomplish them. And then the results that we should be starting to see.
The
would be the
progress, progress toward those goals should be clearer and more specific in the next report.
In that next report. Regarding the focus on ELL and students with special needs, I want to clarify again, this report is from June to September.
Yes.
So things that coming on of that ELL, half something else person, and assessing, doing WEDA testing and that sort of stuff is so that process is started, but we're not getting a report on the impact of that as of yet. Is that would be more of that implementation piece for the next in January.
Yeah, I think the plan is still under, both plans are still under review, and so implementation would follow that.
And I thought, seeing as we've discussed the Southbridge standard, I don't think anybody in the community knows what the Southbridge standard is and what those 7 things are. So I'm just going to read them very quickly. It's learning objectives so that they're, and the expectation is not for students, but for teachers and instructional support staff. So in a learning objective that will be articulated, what the students will learn and be able to do in every classroom every day. Collaboration and cooperation, working together to develop and deliver instruction using shared strategies and resources. Differentiated instruction, which is scaffolding and instruction to meet the needs of all learners. Varied instructional strategies, using a variety of instructional strategies, groupings, and room arrangements to promote student acquisition of the learning objective. Learning resources, use classroom materials which support the learning objective, interactive word walls, manipulatives, number lines, etc. Higher order thinking, modeling, and facilitating a high level of discourse to include multiple questioning strategies in the use of Bloom's taxonomy and activate higher order thinking skills. And assessment, which I think is what Dr. Page was referring to, a use of a variety of authentic assessment strategies to evaluate student acquisition of learning objectives and to continuously inform instruction. So it's not that when people go in that they're necessarily assessing the learning per se, but that they're assessing that a tool is in place to assess that learning. And that the instructional strategies are in place in order to impact that student learning and hopefully in turn raise our MCAS scores and get us moving forward from being the low performing district that we are and moving us out of that. So I think for the community, we talk about things up here and we have them in front of us, but a lot of people have no idea what we're talking about. So it'd be 4 of those 7 things would be clearly outlined, that would be checked off in those
would be
learning
focused
walks.
on in the district learning walks,
Right.
and it may be a different orientation in a school learning walk. It could vary.
And the idea is that that's not just happening when a learning walk is, but a learning walk could happen at any time, and these things would be observed ongoing.
When the principal is there, when the instructional...
when nobody's there, just our kids.
No one's there but the learners.
Absolutely. The last question I had was, in your summary, over the last 4 months, careful and targeted planning for improvement in instruction and outcomes had occurred. Can you talk about what that was, what this planning looked like, how that came about? And
It's complicated, and probably the district could add much more to it, but for example, when I started as a monitor, there was a calendar, and the district learning walks were laid out month by month. The meetings of the district leadership team was laid out month by month. There is a protocol for each of the teams that are occurring as to who's present, how they take minutes, and turning in the minutes. It's laid, there's a district dashboard now that every principal turns in, which gives a summary of here's what the discipline has looked like, here's what attendance looks like, here's the number of classroom observations I did. So there's a way of collecting evidence that if that is now then well done should yield good evidence.
So is this the first time that these systems have been put in place?
I can't answer that because I'm new.
Yeah, I think really, for us, the focus is on this period. We can't really comment too much on what was and what wasn't in place.
Well, if we're continuing, my concern is that if we're continuing to set up systems and then changing the system every year, that's not really closing a loop and having an ongoing, continuous cycle of improvement. It's kind of that stop-start. I didn't know if Ms. Diaz, can you speak to anything about that? I see her out there. Going across. Certainly, I said that they explained some of the systems that have been put in place to collect the data and support ongoing learning, and my question was, are these new systems that haven't been put in place? Have they not been implemented? How?
One of the things that I think is really clear about the district right now is that there are structures and systems in place to ensure implementation. So for instance, the dashboards talk about how student interventions are happening, how many students need intervention, what are the interventions, how many observations have been done, how principals are rating teachers, which will happen more at the end of the year. So there's a lot of information being collected, which I don't think was collected before.
Okay. That makes sense. This is the first time we've ever kind of gotten a little good news on our AIP, and knowing that it's moving forward, I want to just have clarity that no matter what happens from this point on, we have the systems in place to support the learning, despite who our plan manager is at any given time, that we're moving in that direction and things are in place that are going to stay in place to continue that cycle.
That's absolutely important, that the district is able to show that the systems and the structures will ensure a continual curriculum, continual improvement. Yeah. And that's not going to change from month to month, year to year. And I know that's something the school committee has been concerned about.
Thank you. That is all that I have, which I'm sure you all think is plenty.
Is there anything else on this side? Mrs. Donovan? Oh, sorry, Grace. Oh, Mrs. Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Pat.
Glad to meet you all.
I don't know who can answer this. A couple of the questions that I have, Ms. Williams, are questions that were actually part of your report, even though you did not mention them in your brief summary.
Yes.
So, and again, this particular question, I don't know if it would be more appropriate for you to answer, or perhaps somebody from our district learning team. Under objective number 2, it's actually the very first line of our page 3, talking about, the district with certain plans that they're putting in place. And one of the things that was written in this report said that the district is planning to develop monthly open response common assessments. And then subsequent to that, quarterly high school ELA and math assessments have not yet been addressed. I don't know if you could explain what that means. That was the first time I'd seen that.
Those are two separate things. Yep. The second thing you mentioned, the quarterly high school English and math exams, at the point at which I wrote this report, they had not been developed. I can tell you, outside of this report, I was at a recent highlights meeting, and they are now developed and are in place. So I can address that.
Okay.
I can't so well address the open response.
It's the first time I'd heard of that. I mean, I don't know if that's related to answering an open response question on an MCAS, or am I off? Is that that's what we're doing? Because we know that that's an area that some kids aren't even attempting to answer, so are we looking to see who's answering or not attempting? Or
do you want?
I don't know.
So when you look at some of our data for MCAS, one of the glaring issues is our students' lack of attention to open response and the number of zeros that they take. So the goal of the district is to improve that, and to improve that, it is to give students consistent practice, also to teach them protocols to address, and also to figure out, is the open response lack of answer due to the fact that students aren't comfortable writing, or is it because they do not understand understand either the text that they read or the question. So a lot of work over this year will be around providing opportunities for students to do open responses, to share those, and then to gather student work to assess our students improving. So that's the goal of that.
Okay, I thought it was on that line, but I wasn't sure. Okay, thank you for that clarification. The second question that I had, or just for clarification before you sit down real quick, but you can just nod your head if you need to. Our new literacy program, the National Geographic, I just want to clarify that's just our K through 12 program. I mean K through 5, K through 5. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I got rollerblades the other day. They would be helpful. Yes, it's a K-5 program. I would like to introduce to school committee that we've also purchased OWL curriculum for the pre-K. It's very important that we know and understand our youngest students' literacy skills, and that we address them with intervention early so that as they progress, they are not caught behind. And so the teachers aren't forced to do catch-up work, but they are just able to stay with their curriculum. With that being said, we did have our middle school reading teachers come to see the National Geographic Reach for Reading program, and so we will be looking at curriculum specific to reading for the middle school and high school as well.
Does the National Geographic have an extension program that would cover those grade levels, or would we be looking at something
We're going to be looking
similar?
at it and comparing.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, thank you.
Just like the curriculum committee did with National Geographic, we'll do the same at the secondary
Okay.
level.
All right, thank you very much. And then my final question, Ms. Williams, was in the note that you had at the very last part of your report. Since the report covers a period spanning 2 AIPs, ratings are not provided. I wasn't sure what ratings or rankings are you referring to, and what type of ranking system will you be providing in the future?
Go ahead. Sure. Thanks. So usually AIP monitoring reports do include ratings, and so we look at each strategic initiative in the plan, and we look at basically 2 elements. So we look at how embedded the practices are, the strategies that that initiative addresses, and also how far along the district is to meeting the goals for that objective.
Okay.
So each initiative will be getting 2 ratings going forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
And then you can compare report to report whether you've had an improvement in the rating that you've got under a particular objective.
Okay, very good. All right, I'm all set. Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Oliva?
Through you, Madam Chair, I only have one question, in that you said that the next report would be due in January. Can you give us a rough estimate as to what the time frame in January looks like?
So actually, I was a little bit tentative, and the reason for that is that we're planning to work with district leaders to find out what exact schedule would work based on the AIP, so that the next report can include the results of some benchmarks. Some districts have a trimester system, some districts have a quarterly system, so we're trying to be a little bit more flexible this year and work kind of in tandem with the AIP and with that schedule. So I'd be happy to give you more specifics, but I actually don't have that information yet. I'll be communicating more with Superintendent Gardner and her team, and would be happy to get back to you on that.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
I just have a question. Thank you again for coming this evening. We sincerely appreciate it. Regarding next steps, are these next steps as of the date of the report, or are these the next steps that were listed as at the end of the period? So in other words, has action already begun on these next steps, or are we supposed to take these next steps and move them forward?
Yeah, some of them are, I write these as I write the report, which is usually right at the committee. So I read them because they're so specific, but you can assume that some of them are underway.
In place. Okay.
And if I could just add too, I mean, we offer these as suggestions based on the monitor's observations, but it's really a complex effort figuring out which of these should be prioritized. There are probably very important next steps that aren't in this list as well. So it's just some guidance.
Understood. Thank you. Is there anything else from the school committee? Ms. Gardner, did you want to add anything?
I would just like to thank, first of all, Laura Shane, who I believe last February came to our aid when we were struggling with getting this accomplished. And because we had looked at previous plans, and when we looked at where we were, they didn't seem to match what we were doing. So we had great help to sort of start in the middle, and we said last year many times that if our year last year had started in April, we would have had a fantastic year. But because of that, we started off extremely well this year. Sally Dias came to us, Pat Jackman, who has joined us tonight, and we were very, very fortunate in the summer to get Pat Williams. And so it's been, when you say AIP, you don't often say fun, but they've been really fun to work with. They've been tough, and they've made us really think about what we're doing and where we're going. And I think the greatest thing about working with all of you is that you have made us in the district here and our administrators, our greatest focus has been on the through line to students and how we make them better students and close those gaps. But I really appreciate that you have helped us continue with that focus and to really be our partners. And prior to all of you stepping in, we didn't feel that partnership. So it's always good when the DESE comes and really helps us with where we are to get to where we need. So I would like to thank all of you.
Thank you very much. It's our pleasure. We appreciate it.
Does Brooke want to say something?
The air is dry in here. I was just saying to Mr. Long, I have been actually in Superintendent Gardner's position in Winchendon for 5 years, and Winchendon was declared underperforming at about the same time. The challenges are great, and there is such a longing to get out of that level for peace. And you want the best for your children, and I so understand that. When I looked over your AIP tonight, I'd reviewed it earlier, and I refreshed my memory on it tonight. I really believe with my heart that you are in the right direction. And as I sat here and listened to the presentation tonight, I heard the things that I know that we went after in Winchendon, the early literacy component, the learning walks. I know one of your school committee members had some questions about that, and rightfully so. But honestly, when they're implemented with fidelity, they are an incredible process to use. The new reading and the new literacy component that you're going after, spot on. So much of what you have in this plan is so doable. And I just know that when you come out of this on the other side, you will feel amazing. I just remember when that label was removed for us, and you just wanted to go out and celebrate in the streets, like, yes, we finally did this, you know. So, you know, I had just said to Mr. Long, my heart I just so feel for where you're at right now. But having lived on the other side and going through the painstaking process of getting there, when it's all over, you feel so incredible about what you've done for your children. And I know that you want the very, very best for your children. And I really believe that this plan will put you there. You know, as we were talking to coming in, you've got some incredible opportunities in front of you right now. You really do. You're going to have some fresh starts with some principals and such. I really think that you're on the right path, and we are so pulling for you because you had mentioned, Madam Chair, the whole notion of shedding that level 4, and I so hope that you're able to do this, but I do think you're on the right track. So I thank you very much for some time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate it. We will continue on with the rest of the meeting. So we're on agenda item number 10, which is a report of the Finance Director, Mr. Osborne.
Hi.
Good evening.
I am pleased to announce tonight that we are completed with the end-of-year report. It should absolutely be submitted Friday. I've opted, it's 60 pages long on multiple sizes of paper. We opted out of printing a copy for every member of this committee. If you would like your own copy to cherish and love, please let my office know and we'll make you a copy. We're happy to do that. It's a tough report to understand without some context. I wanted to just share, I mean, this is the binder that goes behind it. This is the backup material that our auditor is going to look at. in order to tie out everything on the end-of-the-year report. There will be probably a flurry of small things to do with it prior to submission Friday. I will meet with the town, and we'll just go over the components and should have it submitted by Friday.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Good. Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Next, we have the report of the superintendent, Ms. Gardner.
Thank you. Well, I think that we've had a pretty exciting 2 weeks. We've had 2 associate commissioners visit us, and that certainly hasn't happened in the time that I have been here. I would just like to pick up on what the Madam Chair said when Dr. Russell Johnston was here, and David Roach, who I believe was a local superintendent, and Senator Moore. We had a great visit at the high school, middle school, and again, it's exciting to see learning taking place. It's exciting to see students in class and excited about learning. So we were very excited about that. As we talk about the AIP and a few things that they mentioned, some of the things that we have accomplished this year, we have created a ELL, English Language Learners School Improvement Plan, and that focuses on the issues. So Dr. Page, the ones that you brought up, many of them we are looking at individually. We're looking at them as students. And I'm not sure when these were done. They were not done last year because some change in staff. And we also have done a Students with Disability Improvement Plan, which we're still working on. Ms. Culligan has been working very, very hard on that with her staff. We've had meetings with our sorry, I go a little southern sometimes, our IRSs and our academic deans. We pulled in some of the fantastic teachers, and I always like to say at these meetings, we have great teachers, and I say again, and I mean it with all my heart, teachers have saved this district time and time and time again when adults and district leadership has not saved this district. And so again, that goes out to the teachers. It's been amazing when they have come on board to help write these plans or to really figure out what the students need and how we get them. Even when I came last year, and it was kind of a survey for us to really realize what we need, and when we realized that there was no reading program, it was difficult to realize there was no reading program because when you went in the teachers' rooms, especially in the elementary, they were so well provisioned, but when you talked to those teachers, they had bought everything. Everything. And it was just absolutely astonishing. Annette Stavros, who has also joined us through DESE, is a wonderful curriculum person, and she was astonished by going through the classrooms, but we never saw any common thread. So by getting a curriculum for our 1 through 5 and getting for pre-KK, and then looking at systems for our high school and middle schools to be more successful, we're doing well. I mean, we've taken a giant leap in a small amount of time, and we're very proud of that. Some fun things that I got to do last week, Dr. Page invited me to the Lions Club. I got to go over and make a few remarks and just see some incredible men who are so dedicated to this town, who look forward to our schools being better, who look forward to us being successful, but who also have pledged to help us in any way that they can. So I really appreciate that opportunity. You know, I got to spend some time with Ray, and that was fun, and we critiqued barbecue while we were there. And then I think the other fun part of my time, a week before last, I believe, that we have so much going on, it's kind of hard, is Eastford Road had a Hispanic parade, and it was absolutely amazing to go watch our really little ones walk around wearing flags and costumes and making music to many, many different Hispanic cultures. And so we have a lot of exciting things going on right now, and I think Southbridge is an exciting place to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll move on then to agenda item number 12, which is school committee actions. The first action on tonight's agenda is approval of, I was just going to say, pardon me, I just realized that too. Did you want to talk about?
I'm sorry, thank you. We are still receiving some of these donations. I'm sorry. I talked to Leanne Pate this afternoon. There are some more coming. And just this afternoon, our principals, Bill Latoy and Vinnie Regan, have started working out how they're going to utilize some of these resources. And so as we add more at our next meeting, I would like to revisit this again so that we'll do it at one shot, but they can talk about how they're using them in their schools.
And the donations are from?
I don't have
The Southbridge Sped Pack?
Southbridge Sped Pack, but they have them from a community organization, and I apologize, I don't have it.
Okay. So we'll revisit that the next meeting
We
then.
will.
Thank you. Okay. So now we'll move on to school committee actions. The first action is the third reading and adoption of policy file EFC Food Services.
Madam Chair,
Mr.
I
Abraham?
ask unanimous consent, excuse me, that the third reading of policy file EFC Food Services be waived and the policy adopted.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor to use unanimous consent to waive the third reading and adopt policy file EFC Food Services. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Page. Any
Not required to be a second if it's unanimous consent.
Okay. By unanimous consent, if there's no objection, should I do a roll call, or?
No.
No. No objection. By unanimous consent, third reading and adoption of policy EFC is now adopted, food services policy. That policy will be updated on the district website for everybody to see.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I ask unanimous consent that items B and C under school committee actions, Southern Worcester County Educational Collaborative Report, and McMahon Field bonfire on November 28, 2014, be accepted by the committee, and as no action is required, that we move to unfinished business.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Abrahamson for unanimous consent of agenda items 12B and 12C. Is there any objection? Mrs. Donovan?
Not really objection, but I'm sorry, just a clarification. I believe Mr. Abrahamson gave the date of November 28th of the day of the bonfire, but I believe that to be November 26th. It's written on our agenda
Yes,
as
it is.
26th, so if we
sorry.
just
Yes.
clarify that that is
Thank
the
you.
date, then I'm good to go. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody object? Nope. Then by unanimous consent, agenda items 12B and 12C are accepted. The Southern Worcester County Educational Collaborative First Quarter Report has been accepted, and the McMahon Field bonfire, I do have to say on that, we do not approve the bonfire itself. That's up to the town council. So our unanimous consent is to make a recommendation that the town council approve the bonfire, and we can relay that to them, just so you know. Okay. We're moving on then to agenda item 13, which is unfinished business.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Abrahamson?
I ask unanimous consent that the second reading of policy file BEDBA consent agenda be waived.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor to adopt the second reading of policy file BEDBA by unanimous consent. Is there any objection? By unanimous consent, then, we're going to waive the second reading of policy file BEDBA.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I ask unanimous consent that the second reading of policy file BEDB meeting agenda be waived.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor to waive by unanimous consent the second reading of policy file BEDB meeting agenda. Is there any objection? Seeing none, by unanimous consent, we're going to waive the second reading of policy file BEDB.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Abrahamson.
I ask unanimous consent that the second reading of policy file BEDBE agenda format be waived.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor to waive the second reading of policy file BEDB-E agenda format. Does anybody object? Is there any objection from any member of the school committee? Seeing none, then by unanimous consent, we're going to waive the second reading of policy file BEDB-E agenda format. Thank you for that. Next, under new business, just to let you know, the next regular school committee meeting will be held on Wednesday, November 12th, 2014, at 7:30 p.m. in council chambers. That is a Wednesday night. There's no school on the Tuesday, which is Veterans Day. So different date and different time, please note. Next, we'll move to member forum. Is there any member who would like to speak this evening? Is there any? Mrs. Congdon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank Ms. Skripczak for inviting me to attend the Hispanic Heritage Celebration. It was a nice break to normal school committee business to go and watch the children walk in the parade. The chili was also very yummy, and it was nice to interact with the parents as they watched their children march and hold their different props. It was a lot of fun. I also just wanted to mention to parents that on the website, southbridge.k12.ma.us, that there is a top bar that says district calendar, and on that, the different administrative team has put all of their events that are happening, and it's nice to be able to pre-plan, especially for those parents that are really busy with work schedules, to be able to attend those events. So please refer to the district website and click on calendar, and you can plan for the different events for your student. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Congdon. Is there anybody else? Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you. I have 2 items. The first thing I wanted to do was to publicly thank, I know they're still out in the audience, Ms. Sally Dias and Pat Jackman. I know both of you are here literally almost every single day, and the work that you're doing embedded in our district to aid Ms. Gardner in this implementation of the Accelerated Improvement Plan is something that I can see and that I have witnessed, and I want to just personally thank you. You both are an integral part of having this plan come to be, and there's always a lot of people behind the scenes, and we are all on board, and this has to be, and I know that it is, our primary focus is this AIP. There is nothing else that our eyes or our attention should be on except this Accelerated Improvement Plan to make it what it needs to be. People that were here tonight clearly said we have things in place, the systems are in place. Next step is implementation. We have stable leadership, we have a competent superintendent, we have competent new building principals who have been trained in the AIP and are ready to go. You have a school committee that is very supportive of this AIP, and I just wanted to thank you and reassure you from me personally that that is my focus and that is my intent, is to see this process through. So thank you both for the time and the energy that you are doing to assist us in this. And the second thing that I would like to do is thank Ms. Krantz and Mr. Silvestri and commend them for the work that they did with our theater group at Southbridge Middle High School last week. They put on the production of Alice in Wonderland. We had a student co-director, Ken Allard, who also, did a phenomenal job as one of our student kids. And what was great to see, I attended both evenings, was that we had administrators and faculty from all 4 schools represented on both nights. And that's something that we don't see very often, and the fact that the people that came there show that they care and they want to support the kids and support the arts in our district, that goes a long way, and I just want them, I know you know who you are and I know who you are, and I just wanted to thank them because that's very important for our kids and for community members to see as well, to recognize that there are people from the schools, all 4 schools, that care and that were there. So I wanted to just make sure that I thank them for that, and that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mrs. Quinney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to build a little bit on what Mrs. Donovan said regarding our AIP, and that that truly is the focus of our school district, not necessarily the plan itself, but the steps in the plan and how that's impacting the learning that's taking place in our classrooms in order to support student learning and to ensure that our kids, every kid at all levels, are getting what they need in order to be successful. So I don't think we can talk enough about the AIP or how much the community should know what that is, what that means to our district, what that means to your child sitting in a classroom, to ensure that they're getting the highest quality education and teaching, and that they're taught at their level in the way that they can understand in order to be successful and to be able to share the knowledge that they have. So I think everybody who's worked so very hard on the AIP, and again, would like to second what Kara said regarding the superintendent and the district leadership team, and Sally and Pat, who I know have worked tirelessly and are so committed to our district and to our kids that isn't lost on me, or I think anyone else up here, that you are having a great impact on the education of our children, and all of you, thank you so much. I also wanted to say that I attended Alice in Wonderland, and there's another performance coming up, I think in January, they said. And if you missed the Alice in Wonderland, I would strongly encourage you to go. It was excellent. Captivated my 3-year-olds for the entire length of the production, which is not an easy task. So it was an excellent production, and thank you to all involved, and congratulations to the Drama Club. Also, last night at Eastford Road School, there was a literacy night, a family literacy night, and I think that would be one of those family and community engagement pieces that was missing from the AIP this time around. Report, there were many parents that attended, phenomenal books that went, and then hands-on learning, crafts that kids could take home about the story that kind of related to, and I know when my daughter went home, she went through each thing and talked about the books that were associated with that and the story of the rainbow fish. So it's little things like that that are opportunities for the community to come together, support learning, support education, and know how to carry that over at home. So I thank you to Ms. Gripsack and Ms. Rabata and Ms. Wayman and everyone else who really did a really nice job in making that a great night for our kids. So thank you. That is all.
Thank you. Anything over here? You all good? Okay, thank you. Did you want Ms. Diaz to report?
She would like to. I mean, she's...
Sally, did you have something you wanted to say in response? I wasn't sure if there was something a final comment you wanted to make?
First, I'd like to thank the school committee members for their kind comments. I certainly agree with everything that has been said about the way that the system is now positioned to implement the AIP. You know that I'm in the schools a lot, probably more than people may want, but I do have a chance to observe the kind of careful planning, the implementation of programs that are really serving the students. I also know how eager you all are to get out of level 4, and not just to get rid of me, but be able to prove to the community that the schools are on the right track, not only on the right track, but they're improving greatly, and it's a wonderful place to send the children of Southbridge to grow and to learn. I think that one of the things I noted way back when I looked at some of the old reports, I mean, you've been having review reports forever. You must be very sick of it. And some of the things I noted was just a continual comments about underperformance, about changing and unstable leadership, about poor planning. And I think those things have changed. So I am very confident, as our other people who spoke tonight, that you're all on the right track, and you probably will be getting rid of me soon.
Thank you again. If there's nothing further from the school committee, I will now entertain a motion to enter executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Part 1, to discuss a complaint against an employee, and also Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Part 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the school committee, and I so declare. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Abrahamson. Is there a second?
Second.
Before the motion to enter executive session? We have a motion and a second on the floor, correct? I don't see counsel here. I will
Madam Chair,
agree. Sir.
I'll withdraw the motion and
Thank you. That would be.
request that we
Take a brief recess?
take a recess.
Okay, thank you. Very good. We will recess. The time now is 8:22. Mr. Long, how long would you like? Okay. How about in 10 minutes? So about 8:32? Thank you. welcome. We're back. The time is 8:47 p.m. Please note that all members of the school committee are present on the dais, as well as Superintendent Gardner, the Director of Finance, Mr. Aaron Osborne. So I'll call the meeting back to order at 8:47 p.m. And now I will request a motion to enter executive session under Chapter 30A, 21A, Part 1, to discuss a complaint against an employee.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Abrahamson. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Mrs. Congdon. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes?
Thank you. And now I turn to Ms. Gardner and ask if you would like this meeting held in open session or executive session.
I would like it held in open session, please.
Thank you. At this time, I would call on Dr. Page to present a summary of the complaint he received against the superintendent. They're being distributed now. Yes. Yes.
It's a no.
Mr. Moskowitz. Thank you. Turn it on. I just want to be clear, this is not a hearing this evening. This is, the purpose of this executive session was to receive the complaint. This is the first time the members of the school committee, other than Dr. Page and myself, have seen this. And so this is the first time for everybody, so I would say that Dr. Page would present his information, and then we would take a recess for opportunity to review that, and that you would receive an unredacted copy. Thank you. Mrs. Quinney?
Madam Chair, it appears that this complaint is anonymous. Is it not our policy that anonymous complaints will be dismissed as there's no name attached to this complaint? Is that not our policy? There's no name?
It's been redacted for public session.
Given,
If we could proceed and he could give his summary, he is the recipient of the complaint. It's my understanding he was not going to read the complaints, that he was going to talk about how they came into his, how they came to him and through him.
I would assume respectfully that that is information that would be disclosed during the course of an investigation of these complaints. And I would further assume that Mr. Page has no purpose to recite the summary of the means by which he received it here, because we all know that he has received it, he's distributed it. I don't think it's fair to my client to have Mr. Page put his, as I say, gloss on the story. My client's not in a position to respond to it. My client's not in a position to respond to it, hasn't had a chance to review it with me or determine whether there's any evidence whatsoever. So with respect to privacy rights cited by Mr. Moskowitz, I'm not sure what Mr. Page's spin on whatever this is. Actually, I don't think that Dr. Page can.
Madam.
You recommend? Okay, thank you. Mrs. Quinney, did you have something
Well,
before we proceed?
I guess I'm very confused, given this was going to be executive session, and not 5 minutes ago, it was decided that it was public. And given it says confidential on it, but it doesn't have any names, I don't feel comfortable even discussing this, because I feel as a school committee member, I've received an anonymous complaint regarding personnel, which I don't think should even be entertained if it doesn't have a name on it.
I will say that this was planned for executive session, and the affected employee has the right to waive that executive session and request that the hearing be held in open session. And that did just occur. So we're going to go ahead and proceed. You have an option, if you don't feel comfortable, of removing yourself from the dais or of not participating. But
It's anonymous.
you know, this isn't necessarily the way I would have preferred to proceed, but it's where we are. So,
Is this what I would have received in executive session?
no.
So I guess 5 minutes ago it was decided that it wasn't going to be an executive session, and we have a redacted copy.
We
which
had
is
two
concerning.
versions. We had a redacted version, and we had the original complaint, and it just depends on, in public session, how that is handled, and we opted to go this route here.
Right.
Override the school committee's vote. Executive session, to make it public.
So-
Of that, the school committee is provided by the law to come into the public session. Because of the fact. Because of the law, the school committee has to go into public session. The names have been redacted. There's been no action taken by the school committee. They're receiving it tonight. What they would
Thank you. I'm going to proceed and call on Dr. Page to present his summary.
I'm going to give you a summary of facts that I've been advised by legal counsel. No, sorry. That's not what I said. I said I'm going to give the facts in terms of how the information came to me and what I did with it. That's all.
Thank you.
Shall I proceed, Madam Chair?
Please.
Okay. On October 8th, 2014, I received a message from an employee asking if the employee could have if I would be willing to have a conversation with me, and I agreed. The employee then called me and recounted events of an incident where allegedly a subordinate was confronted by Superintendent Gardner and Walter Solzak, Director of Operations, individually about actions or inactions on the subordinate's part last school year. The employee explained that the subordinate informed the employee that the subordinate was directly threatened by Ms. Gardner that she would come after him if he did not cooperate with her on assessing blame for last year's mistakes regarding MCAS and EPP procedures. Feeling these allegations appeared to be a violation of the superintendent's authority in confronting a subordinate without the employee's knowledge and a serious lack of professionalism on the part of the superintendent by making threats to shred documents along with threats of retribution, including termination, I asked the employee to inquire as to whether or not the subordinate would be willing to provide a written account of this meeting with the superintendent and Mr. Solzak. Since then, I have received a written statement from the subordinate and a corroborating statement from the employee recounting statements regarding utilization of a school resource officer and a statement from another subordinate regarding MCAS events. Collectively, these documents included several alleged incidents of what appeared to be serious accounts of unprofessional behavior by the superintendent, the allegations in summary described. Ms. Gardner told a subordinate that she would come after him if he mentioned to anyone about a meeting with him and Mr. Solzak and her. Ms. Gardner told the subordinate that she would shred documents related to MCAS testing procedures. Ms. Gardner told the employee that the employee needs to convince the subordinate to produce a statement that acknowledges that a former employee instructed this subordinate to sign MCAS-related documents. When the employee refused, Ms. Gardner told the employee that the employee was trusting the wrong person. Ms. Gardner told the employee that she would not have hired the employee if she knew she had a certain disease. Ms. Gardner instructed the employee contrary to the employee's professional opinion regarding utilization of the school resource officer. Ms. Gardner reporting to the public that serious mistakes related to MCAS testing were made by the previous administration and that people were dishonest when in fact she was advised by district personnel that the initial assessment of MCAS records from last year were preliminary. I consulted our attorneys at American O'Connell to obtain advice on the proper procedure for bringing these complaints forward, and as a result of the advice given, I provided the documents in hand to our school committee chair on Friday, October 17th. And those are all of the documents that I received regarding this, and I promptly, as soon as I received everything, I handed them over to the chair.
Thank you. So this time I'd like to ask Superintendent Gardner if she'd like time to review this information with her attorney.
It's unfortunate that Mr. Page didn't bring these complaints directly to the attention of the superintendent, but I suppose we'll find out why that happened as we go through this process. yes, of course, we would like some time to review this. From what I can glean, apparently the superintendent was trying to straighten out some irregularities in the administration or the scoring of the MCAS last year, and sounds like maybe she was trying to take some people to task for things that should have happened but did not. So I would think that that would be within the realm of the superintendent's job, but perhaps we have a different view of what the superintendent's job is. So yes, we would like some time to respond to this. We'd like an unredacted copy of the report. It sounds like you may have them here with you tonight, so I would like one tonight. I'd appreciate a copy of Mr. Page's summary, which he appeared to be reading from, if in fact it's a separate document. And I'm happy to coordinate with Mr. Moskos in terms of a schedule of interviews of witnesses so that we can determine what happened here.
Thank you. Mr. Moskos.
Madam Chair, the question is whether tonight the superintendent wants time to review this, but at some point tonight the committee has to decide how they're going to handle this particular complaint and whether they're going to accept it or not, or whether they can take any other action. So that I do think that there should be a recess for about 20 minutes to allow Attorney Long and the superintendent to read the complaint, and then after that allow them to give any response they would like to, and then the school committee must decide how they want to proceed on it.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, respectfully, this complaint is dated October 7th. To expect the superintendent to respond to this in any meaningful way this evening after a 10 or a 15 or a 20-minute recess is fundamentally unfair and unreasonable. So we acknowledge receipt of the redacted complaint. We have every expectation that we will reply to it and reply to it in a serious manner. And as I had mentioned already, we certainly would cooperate with Mr. Moskos or his office in scheduling interviews of witnesses to see what happened. But to expect us to respond to this tonight is patently unreasonable, and we are not in a position to do so, respectfully.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, since the superintendent is waive the right to respond to this tonight, the matter is before you, and you'll have to decide what course of action you want to take.
Okay, thank you. I would like to take a recess to allow the school committee an opportunity to read these documents, and that can afford Ms. Gardner some preliminary time to meet with you, and then when we reconvene, we'll decide how we're going to proceed then. So I'm going to recess the meeting. It's 9:05 and 9:25. We'll be back here. Please use the time to just read. The time is 9:27. I'd like to reconvene the meeting. Please note the presence. All school committee members are present. Ms. Gardner is on the dais along with Mr. Osborne. Now that we've had time to review the documents, we have possible courses of action, and I'm going to just briefly go over those with you. We can take no action and place the complaint in an administrative file. We can vote to request that the chair meet with the complaining parties to verify the complaint and background leading to the complaint, and the chair could report back to the committee at a later meeting date. We can authorize an investigator to investigate the complaint, the investigator to be appointed by the chair, and a report to be filed 30 days from the appointment. I'm sorry, there are really 3 courses of action at this point that I see. And my recommendation would be to authorize an outside investigator to report back to the school committee with a report to be filed 30 days from the appointment. And I don't know if there's any discussion or if somebody would want to make a motion or have additional discussion at this point in time regarding those courses of action. Anybody?
So moved.
Madam Chair, if I might, we would welcome the opportunity to participate in that investigation, and we'll work with Mr. Mosca's office or whomever is appointed. We would, again, make the request for unredacted copies and copies of any statement that Mr. Page made this evening. These are matters that we believe will ultimately reflect to the credit of the superintendent in terms of trying to find out what went wrong with the MCAS administration and scoring last year, and to the extent that resulted in some people being taken to task, that's the superintendent's job.
Thank you. We have a motion, and what is your motion, Dr. Page?
You entertained the motion to appoint an investigator to investigate and report back to you?
Yes.
In 30 days?
The investigator would report back to the committee,
Right.
but would be appointed by me upon recommendation of council. The report to be filed 30 days from the appointment. Is that your motion?
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Olivo. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Madam Chair, I guess I should have said this before the motion was before us, but it's concerning to me kind of the process that this kind of all went through. I think we have multiple pages of a complaint, yet we have heard nothing from the person to whom the complaint is waged against. So I just find it disconcerting, first, that we don't have the names of these people. So in my opinion, we're proceeding based upon an anonymous complaint, which I believe is out of compliance with our policy. And further to that, that we would make a set a course of action before hearing any information from the person to whom these allegations are filed against or complaints waged against. I think that that's just a little bit absurd. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there any other comment? Mr. Abrahamson?
It's politics as usual. It's the slash and burn as usual. It's the people who do not want this school system to proceed as usual. I'll vote for this, Madam Chair. But I have no doubt where it's coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody here who would like to comment?
Thank you.
Mrs.
I
Quinney?
guess I'll make another comment. I think things like this, if merited, clearly need to be addressed. However, I think that this really takes away from our school district and all the things we have set forth, that our goal as a school committee and a school district is to impact students' education and ensure that they're getting a high-quality education. We heard from the DESE that we're on the right track. I think a lot of these potential distractions that continue to be anonymous are distracting from our goal and our mission and taking away from our kids. Some of the information in here discusses labor intensity of things that are taking away from our kids. And I think the more we continue to ask of our team, the more burden we place on them to do things that the 2,000 kids sitting in our classrooms in our school district, it's appalling to me, all the things that we are asking of administrators and staff members that are taking away from our kids. And I think this report outlines some of that, and I think if our focus is truly on our kids, then we need to ensure that mistakes in the past are identified. We have a plan to move forward. I think that's been done. And then this constant, well, let's keep looking backwards isn't moving us forward. The more we look backwards and discuss why, how, whatever things have happened in the past that is focused away from those 2,000 kids. And we're here for those 2,000 kids. And if this community wants to move ahead and wants to get out of level 4, our schools are the key. And if we continue to entertain distractions from those 2,000 children and their education, then we are doing a disservice to not only those kids, their families, but our communities and our educators. Our teachers are working so hard. I can tell you my 3 kids are having a phenomenal year and are learning so much. And I am so proud of all that is going on in those classrooms, and to hear the state, who usually has absolutely nothing positive to say about us, to say that we're on the right track and moving in the right direction. Putting the district in reverse isn't accomplishing anything at all whatsoever. I think because we have a complaint that a school committee member thinks is based in fact and is presenting information to that, and we haven't heard from Superintendent Gardner on what happened in these particular instances, that we owe her the ability to have an investigation, to have her name cleared, or a plan put in place to assure things don't happen in the past. But I think if we continue to live in the past, we're going to continue to get the results that we've had in the past. And quite frankly, the past sucks in Southbridge, and I want no part of that. I want to be a part of a district that moves forward, that is child-focused, that has an eye on excellence, that believes that every kid in this district deserves a high-quality education, deserves their best shot, and we are responsible for providing that. A community is relying on us, and kids are relying on us, and teachers and staff members who are working really, really hard are relying on us. And I thank everybody for hanging in there, because I know that there have been a lot of these things that have come through the years, and we had teachers who stayed for our kids for lots of years, and they should be commended. And I wish that we were able to just celebrate all the great things that we heard from the DESC today, and I want to be part of a district that moves forward and does the best things for kids, and all these looking in reverse is not getting us anywhere forward, just backwards. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you.
Is there anything else? Anybody else? Anybody else? Mr. Abrahamson?
Make no mistake, it's blog mentality brought to the dais. That's what this is. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Dr. Page?
I just want to make one comment that my role in this is merely as a messenger. I was asked if I would hear information about something. I consulted legal counsel. They advised me on the course of action, and that's what I did. Plain and simple, and period. I have no judgment one way or the other at this point in time.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Mrs. Congdon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that after receiving this information, I think the best situation is an investigation where we can get all sides of the story and just put this issue past us and move on to concentrating on the children of our district, because this is not what I wanted to be doing this evening. This is all new information to me. I just received it right now. And hopefully we can get the investigation underway, get some answers, and make a decision based on those answers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Just one final question. Do we know what this will cost our district? And how much money will be taken away from the education of the children of Southbridge to deal with this issue? Do we know how much this will cost?
I don't know how much it will cost, but what my concern was that we not have an open-ended investigation that lasts forever. We've been through that before, but that I think that all parties involved do deserve, and an opportunity to be heard and to be able to state their case so that we can make a decision to move forward. I am also very concerned about the momentum of this district, and that's why, it was very important to maintain the confidentiality of this, and I think to the credit of the process, it did not leak out. And I'm concerned that it's unfolding the way that it is, but I do think an investigation is the way to go, and as long as it's limited, and if we can't know what the dollar scope's going to be, we can at least limit it to a period of time initially, and hopefully that would be resolved, which is why the motion was for 30 days from the appointment.
I just want to say that it is concerning that we will be moving in reverse in some instances. I do agree that we do have the faculty, that we do have the leadership teams in place that can deal with this type of situation and keep those things moving forward. I think that an outside party coming in and looking at this, because there is some things that are concerning in this, looking at this can give us a clear picture of what is going on, what has gone on, and we can move forward from that.
Thank you. Mrs. Donovan?
Thank you. If you can see my body language, you know what I'm thinking. Of course, I'm very troubled, very saddened by this. There's a lot of emotion that gets involved, and I think that we need to make sure that we don't let our emotions get the best of us. And, they're saying it is what it is, and it's a terrible situation to be in, what we're in right now. But I do agree that we have to respect all the parties involved. We cannot let the complaint become a he said, she said, or I said, they said, or we said, you said situation, because that's not the best thing. Everybody up here that has expressed their opinions have legitimate concerns. I don't think anybody up here wanted to be here. Seeing this, I think it's, again, it's all about the kids, and at the end of the day, when the teachers and the principals go back to school tomorrow, when they try to do their job, the back of our minds is, well, now we're faced this, and it's very unfair to everybody. However, we don't know if this complaint is legit or if it's not, and the only way to know for sure is to follow the process, follow the procedure, have the independent investigator done. I think that the fact that by having the investigator will allow for transparency, I think that Superintendent Gardner wants and has always claimed to be transparent, and that is clearly evident tonight that she wanted this public. She had every opportunity to have this behind closed doors. The fact that she chose this route for whatever reason, says a lot about her too and what her side of the story is. And again, I don't know what her side is. As Ms. Quinney pointed out, we have not heard anything. So I wish us well. I hope that these 30 days are productive. I hope that we can find some resolution. My apologies to everybody. Everybody that's part of the school committee, that's part of the district leadership team, that's a teacher, that's a parent, that's a community member, I'm sorry. And I get disappointed because a lot of this, I try not to, but you can't help but take personally. And so many times, I guess I was naive to think that my actions would be something that would make a difference. And sometimes I feel that no matter how hard I try to make a difference, how hard I try to make things better, there are other people, there are other factors involved that I alone can't do it. And there are other people out there that their actions impact my production. So again, I hope this investigation is productive and in that we can move forward, because without this, without a superintendent, without stable leadership, without an effective AIP, there is no hidden secret of what the destiny for our kids are. And if I don't want to see that ending, and we're just going to keep hoping and praying that this gets resolved, whatever the result may be, that our focus remains on putting this district where it belongs. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion in the school committee? Okay, seeing none, we have, the question on the floor is a vote to authorize an investigator to investigate this complaint, the investigator to be appointed by the chair, and a report to be filed 30 days from the appointment. Thank you. May I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes?
Thank you. The motion carries. And now, we actually we're supposed to have a deal with an executive session to deal with some collective bargaining issues. Mrs. Quinney, I'm going to defer to you on this. It's given the late hour, what you'd want to do.
I have a meeting tomorrow. I'd like to have an executive session to discuss collective bargaining.
Okay, then I would need a motion to enter executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Section Part 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, A, in preparation for contract negotiation with Service Employees International Union Local 888, and also to consider MOAs with the Southbridge Education Association, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect of the collective bargaining position of the school committee.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Abrahamson, seconded by Mrs. Quinney. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes.
Mrs. Congdon?
Yes.
Mr. Olivo?
Yes.
Dr. Page?
Yes.
Mrs. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Quinney?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
All yes?
Thank you.
Madam
The school
Chair.
committee, I'm sorry, the school committee will reconvene in open session for the purpose of adjournment only.